Have you ever looked at your screen, answered one more email, finished one more task, and then thought, why does this feel so much harder than it used to? What if you are not lazy, not weak, not bad at managing your time, and not broken? What if you are not just tired? Picture this. You wake up after a full night of sleep. You do the morning routine. Maybe you even take your coffee outside for a minute and try to reset. You tell yourself, today will be better. But the moment you open your laptop, your body feels heavy. Your mind pulls away, and something inside you quietly says, I do not want to do this again. A lot of people call that burnout. A lot of people also call every hard week burnout. And those are not the same thing. In a recent survey from the American Psychological Association, many workers reported stress from uncertainty, job insecurity, low energy, and emotional exhaustion. So if you feel worn down right now, you are not imagining it, and you are definitely not the only one. But here is the important part. Exhaustion and burnout can look similar from the outside. Both can make you slower, more forgetful, more irritable, and less motivated. Both can make you cancel plans, stare at your phone, and wonder where your energy went. The difference is that exhaustion usually means your tank is low. Burnout often means the tank is low, and your relationship to your work is starting to crack. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Because if you treat burnout like simple tiredness, you may keep trying to sleep your way out of a problem that also needs change. And if you treat normal exhaustion like a full life crisis, you may scare yourself when what you really need is real rest. So let us slow this down and make it clear. First, exhaustion is real. It is not dramatic. It is not fake. It is not a character flaw. Sometimes you are simply depleted. You took on too much. You pushed too long. You did not recover enough. Maybe work got intense. Maybe life got heavy at the same time. Maybe your sleep has been off for weeks. And you kept telling yourself, you were fine because there was no room not to be fine. Exhaustion often says, I need a break. Burnout says something different. Burnout often says, I do not feel like myself anymore. That is one of the biggest clues. According to the World Health Organization, burnout is tied to chronic workplace stress that has not been managed well. It is described through three parts. First, deep exhaustion. Second, mental distance from work, or feeling more negative and cynical about it. Third, reduced sense of effectiveness. That means burnout is not just low energy. It is low energy plus disconnection. It is low energy plus dread. It is low energy plus the strange feeling that even when you are trying, you cannot reach the version of you that used to care. If you have ever said, I am tired all the time, but also weirdly numb, that is the kind of thing I mean. Let me make this more practical. If you are exhausted, rest usually helps, at least somewhat. Not always instantly, not perfectly, but it helps. A good night of sleep helps. A slower weekend helps. A day off helps. After some recovery, you start to feel a little more human. A little more patient. A little more able to focus. The spark is not fully back, but it is reachable. If you are burned out, rest may help your body, but not fully your mind. You sleep, but still feel dread. You take a day off, but Sunday night feels like a wall coming toward you. You go on vacation, and for one moment you loosen up. But the second work comes back into view. The heaviness returns almost immediately. That is not always burnout, but it is a sign worth paying attention to. Here is another difference. Exhaustion usually does not change your core feelings about your work. In a deep way, you may still care. You may still want to do well. You may still feel connected to what you are doing. You are just too drained to do it comfortably. Burnout often starts to change your emotional posture. You feel detached, cynical, flat. Small things annoy you more than they used to. You stop feeling proud of work you would once have cared about. You begin saying things like, what is the point, or none of this matters anyway. That shift is painful, especially for people who used to be deeply invested. And honestly, that is why burnout can be so confusing for high achievers. If you are someone who is used to being reliable, capable, and driven, you may not notice burnout early. You just think you need to push harder. Get more disciplined, wake up earlier, be more grateful, try a better planner. Try a better app. Try a better routine. But when burnout is the issue, the problem is not always that you have failed to optimize yourself. Sometimes the system you are in has been taking more than it gives back. And sometimes your body knows that before your mind is ready to admit it. Another clue is this: exhaustion is often connected to a spike, a deadline, a launch, finals week, a rough month, a family emergency on top of normal work. Burnout is often connected to a pattern. Too much, for too long, with too little recovery. Too much pressure, too little control. Too much responsibility, too little support. Too much output, not enough meaning. Too much pretending you are okay because everyone around you is also pretending. And yes, sometimes burnout gets covered up by productivity. You can still be functioning and burned out. You can still be meeting deadlines, answering messages, showing up, smiling in meetings, and quietly falling apart inside. That is part of what makes it dangerous. People think if they are still performing, they must be fine. But performance is not always proof of well-being. Sometimes performance is just survival in nice clothes. Let me say something that I think a lot of people need to hear. Procrastination is not always laziness. Avoidance is not always immaturity. Sometimes your brain is not refusing work because you are careless. Sometimes it is pulling away because work has become emotionally loaded. You do not just dislike the task. You dislike what the task now represents. Pressure, judgment, depletion, more demands. The feeling that no matter what you do, it will not be enough. That is why people in burnout often say things like, "I know exactly what I need to do. I just cannot make myself do it." It is not a knowledge problem. It is not even always a motivation problem. Sometimes it is a nervous system problem. Now, I want to be careful here. Burnout is not the same thing as depression. And it is not the same thing as anxiety. Even though they can overlap and feel very similar. If your low mood follows you everywhere. If things you used to enjoy feel empty across your whole life. If your sleep, appetite, concentration, or sense of hope are shifting in a bigger way. It is worth talking to a licensed professional. You do not need to sort that out alone. But even without diagnosing anything, there are a few honest questions that can help you tell what might be happening. When you rest, do you actually recover, even a little? When you think about work, do you mainly feel tired, or do you also feel resentful, numb, or detached? Do you still care, but lack energy, or do you feel like caring itself has become hard to access? Do you believe a few days of real recovery would help, or does your whole body feel like it is asking for a deeper change? Those questions matter, because exhaustion usually asks for recovery. Burnout usually asks for recovery and repair. That is a big difference. If this is mostly exhaustion, the answer may be more straightforward than you think. You may need sleep that is actually sleep, not doom scrolling until 1 in the morning. You may need food at normal times, water, movement, fewer commitments for a week, a real day off, less stimulation, less pressure to be available all the time, more boring, ordinary restoration. Sometimes the most healing thing is not dramatic. It is going to bed. It is saying no. It is letting today be enough. But if this is burnout, rest alone may not be enough. You may need boundaries that actually hold. You may need to stop working from your couch, from your bed, from dinner, from the grocery store parking lot, from every pocket of your life. You may need to look at the role itself. The workload, the pace, the unclear expectations, the lack of support, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, the feeling that if you disappoint anyone, everything falls apart. You may need to ask not only, how do I recover, but also, what keeps draining me faster than I can recover? That question can be uncomfortable, because sometimes the answer is not cute. Sometimes the answer is, I keep agreeing to things I do not have capacity for. Sometimes the answer is, my job rewards overfunctioning and I built my identity around being the person who can handle it. Sometimes the answer is, I have been trying to earn rest instead of treating rest like a basic human need. Sometimes the answer is, I do not hate working hard. I hate that it never ends. And for some people, the answer is even deeper. I have tied my worth to being useful. So when my energy drops, I do not just feel tired. I feel ashamed. That part hits hard for a lot of people. Because burnout is not only physical. It can feel personal. You stop recognizing your patience, your creativity, your warmth, your competence, and then you start making the cruelest possible conclusion. Something must be wrong with me. Maybe not. Maybe something is wrong with how long you have been carrying too much. Maybe your mind is not failing you. Maybe it is signaling. Maybe the numbness, the irritability, the procrastination, and the dread are not random flaws. Maybe they are messages. Not dramatic messages. Not glamorous ones. Just honest ones. Something is not working. Something needs attention. Something needs to change. And I know that can be frustrating, because change is harder than a checklist. It is easier to buy a planner than to admit you need stronger boundaries. It is easier to download a meditation app than to tell your team your workload is not sustainable. It is easier to blame yourself than to rethink the whole way you have been living. But naming the truth clearly is often the beginning of getting better. So here is the simplest version. If rest helps, you may be exhausted. If rest does not touch the dread, the detachment, the cynicism, or the sense that you cannot do this the way you used to, burnout becomes more likely. If you are exhausted, think recovery. If you are burned out, think recovery and change. And if you are not sure, please do not use that uncertainty as a reason to ignore yourself. You do not need perfect certainty before you start taking your own suffering seriously. You do not need to wait until you fully crash. You do not need to become impossible to function before your pain counts. You are allowed to pay attention sooner. You are allowed to say, "This pace is costing me too much." You are allowed to notice that your body has been saying no for a while, even if your mouth keeps saying yes. And if nobody has told you this lately, let me tell you now. Being worn down by chronic stress is not proof that you are weak. Struggling to care when you have been carrying too much is not proof that you are lazy. Needing rest does not make you undisciplined. Needing change does not make you ungrateful. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop calling your depletion a personality problem. If this spoke to you, take one honest minute after this video ends and ask yourself one question. When I pull away from my work, am I just tired, or am I trying to protect myself? The answer to that question might tell you more than another productivity tip ever could. And if you want, tell me in the comments which one feels closer to your experience right now, exhaustion or burnout. Not as a label to trap yourself, but as a way to be honest about where you are. Because once you tell the truth about what kind of tired this is, you finally have a real chance to respond to it the right way.